So the reason we looked at herbicide efficacy, obviously when we spray stubbles, the herbicide can actually hit the stubbles and it can either be tied up on that stubble or it can result in an uneven coverage if we're looking at soil applied herbicides. So we wanted to have a look at what they were doing in our systems on upper EP. And so some of the things that we need to consider when we're applying those herbicides is the soil moisture conditions and rainfall we get after application, so whether they're going to actually wash off and back into the soil and get some have some activity. The mobility of the herbicide in the soil water, so whether it is soil moisture activated and needs to be in that soil moisture to actually be taken up by the plant. The persistence of the herbicide, so if it's going to hang around in our system or whether it's for 8 to 12 weeks with something like Treflan, or whether it's just there for a short period and has to be taken up. The susceptibility of our crops to the herbicide, and also the germination pattern of our target weeds. So on upper EP, we were looking at barley grass as the main weed in our farming system. And some of the work we did, we looked at the germination pattern of the barley grass. So these were just it's an average of 5 paddocks at Minnepa. So we were looking at when we were collecting weed seeds in the narrow windrow burning. And so we put them into germination trays over the next season. And you can see here the purple line is barley grass, which is from an uncropped area. And you can see it is all up early compared to when we're looking at barley grass collected out in the paddocks, which is the blue line. And the ryegrass germination was the red line. So a germination pattern of barley grass is actually later in those cropped paddocks at the Minnepa Ag Centre. So when we're looking at the stubble treatments that we applied in the herbicide trial, so we've had it for 3 years. 2015 we had a 3.2 tonne mace crop, and so we ended up with a 5.9 tonne stubble. So we either left that standing with the residues just spread straight out the back of the header, and then we had those residues also windrowed, which we burnt in April, and then we totally removed the stubble on another section where we applied the herbicides. So 2015 was a drier season up at Minnepa. 2016 we had a 4.2 tonne clearfield grenade crop. Again, as stubble treatments, it was grazed over summer, so we ended up with a lighter stubble load, around 1.5 tonne per hectare, and that was either standing or standing with burnt windrows again. And 2017 we had a compass barley stubble, and it ended up with a 3.2 tonne stubble load, again standing, or we laid it over with a prickle chain. So they were stubble treatments that we've imposed. We had 14 different chemical treatments around that over the season, and they ranged in cost from $9 for 1.5 litre of trifluralin through to $107 cost, which in our system is it's a large input. Over the time we've done the trials, we've had a relatively low grass weed population, so I wouldn't say we've pushed these chemicals in a high grass system, but overall with all the trials we've had no interactions between our stubble load and individual chemical treatments. So the results that we've presented in the books are the interactions of the herbicides. And in the start of this season, we actually looked at, used the spray cards to see if we had different interception on the spray cards in the stubble, and again, we had no differences there. So this is just the 2016 trial. All the information is in the farming system summary. So we've got the green ones are the barley grass, and so you can see the barley grass population in the untreated control on the far side. We're getting, again, those barley grass are actually coming up in crop. So in 2015, I think we only had 55% of the barley grass that was actually up in that first 6 weeks, and the other 45% is coming up after the pre-emergent chemicals have been used. So I won't go into too much detail with this the slide, but you can see we've tried a lot of different chemical mixes. So overall, most of the herbicides that we're using in our system are giving us better control than a nil. And our in-crop germination patterns, as I said, with barley grass are definitely later. So we're getting limited control with those pre-emergent herbicides. And I guess the information I've been saying to growers is make sure you know what's out there in your paddock. Actually monitor when your weeds are coming up in crop compared to your fence line. So you know whether you do have a population which is later germinating in your system. And if you have still got those ones that come up early, then your Treflan mix plus something else in your mix is probably still giving you a good control option. But if you are starting to move towards a system where you've got barley grass, which is coming up later in your crop, then you might need to actually push down that weed seed population by using some of the more expensive chemicals and maybe 2-year breaks. So that's all. Just the only other thing that I'd make a comment is we are starting to get some group A resistance in our systems on upper EP, so just be aware of that. And if you do see those round patches that are coming through spray jobs, then it's probably better to get them tested and make sure you know what you're dealing with and actually go back out and deal with them as early as you can, stop them setting seed rather than letting them get through.
Managed to get a few trials in the ground this year, so straight up we'll look at we went in dry this year with some preems on fairly heavy clay soil. So this, well, a lot of you might have already seen these results, but this trial's in 6 weeks dry, all IBS, bar the sulfur on the far left. So I guess main point of note, well, straight up we did box of gold full and box gold half, so don't cut your rates. You can see that there, it hasn't worked too well. Both box gold and secure in this instance showed yeah, good levels of control, establishment control that was. But then you can see, so your box of gold's a few treatments kind of on the left a bit, and then you got your nil in the middle, and then to your right you can see the secure treatment. So the blue boxes represent plants per square metre, which was measured 20 days after emergence. And then just the other week I went back in and counted panicles. So the main difference there you can see is the control that Secure has shown throughout the season in, or the residual control going on into the season. It's lasted a lot longer, which a lot of us know and expect, but yeah, it's done the job that it should. And then we did a similar trial with canola. So the new chemistry worked really well. Essentially this unregistered product FMC that showed fairly good rates of control. The panicle blowout, you can see the propyzamide 1 litre, which is what a lot of people on the lower EP are using at the moment. You can see there the average demonstrated by the line is actually quite low, but the there are kind of outliers there in 1 rep, which kind of makes it look disproportionate. All the other reps, from looking at the numbers, showed really good control apart from that one. But that's just something to take into account. But of course you can't just ditch 1 rep because it makes the graph look better. So put that in there. Yeah, butazan, big differences just in the 300 mil differences in rates there. And the older chemistry there, Treflan Avidex, just, yeah, I don't know, I wouldn't want to use it. And the blowout and panicle numbers there, I'd just compare it to a nil treatment. It's like you put nothing out in your paddock, so you're wasting your money there. And another big point I've got to make is the wheat trial had a domestic population introduced, whereas this was kind of what was there. So quite possibly a bit of resistance in the mix. And then combination of propyzamide and butazan stacked, that's had the best results. So maybe there's a bit more of a residual effect going into the season. Like that's kept panicle numbers at lowest, and the grouping of the numbers there was really tight, like really consistent. But that's a huge cost. But if you want to put in canola and you've got big ryegrass problem, then it's there, it's an option. So here's some work Blake did earlier on in the program, looking at the water rates. So 100 litres was ideal. Over that, no significant increase, but you want the high water rates. But I've got to stress the point that that's the high water rates ensure an even dispersion of chemical across the soil surface. It's not because like here, this demonstrates stubble heights across the bottom, and then you've got the blue line demonstrates the amount of stubble getting caught up, the amount of spray getting caught up on the stubble as a percentage. So up to 40 centimetres of stubble, you're looking at 50% of your sprays getting lost on that stubble. Whether it's lost or not, that's a whole different point of note. But even at 20 centimetres, you're losing 30% onto your stubble. That was something I did earlier on there. So it's just a few numbers. I'd just consider all that, which I'm sure everyone does, but it's just a few points of note that might come in handy, hopefully, and consider rainfall events and proximity of rainfall and and get the chemical as close to the weed seeds as you can.